Hey, this is Kamal Vidal, and you're listening to the Devy Devotional.
We're signing yearbooks and finding the next stud player. All that and more when we return.
Welcome to the Devy Devotional Podcast, a show devoted to college prospect evaluation with a fantasy football focus. With your hosts, John Arrington, Aaron Wilcox, and Andy Starr. This podcast brings you actionable strategies and player-driven analysis for your Devy, C2C, and Dynasty leagues. Let's dive in.
Let's dive into Devy. Welcome to the Devy Devotional, where we stay devoted to Devy. I'm your host, John Arrington, joined as always by Aaron Wilcox and Andy Starr. And tonight we are signing yearbooks, like I tried to say in the intro, and we're going to find the most likely two players. We're going to find the Devy players, maybe C2C relevant players who are the most likely to do something. We'll get into all of that as we get into it. But, just like when you're signing your yearbook and in high school, and you have your most likely to succeed, the most likely to fail, the most likely to be the class clown or whatever it is. That's what we're going through today. But we're going to do obviously football related in honor of our special guest from last week, Felix Sharp. I'm not going to ask Andy and Aaron how they're doing tonight, but I will say, Andy, did you win 32 of your 65 C2C leagues?
No. What do they say? Like, oh, transparency report or whatever. I didn't win any of my, I want to say 7 or 8 C2C leagues, and I was only in the finals in one. So a bit of a rebuilding year for me. I can say that the NFL sides of all my C2C leagues are doing fairly well. So, people don't talk about that, but getting from point A to point B is also important. So NFL's looking good. The farm system needs some more seed sown, but we'll get there.
I like that. I feel like the NFL side gets lost a lot in C2C and Devy talk. Well, maybe not Devy talk, but in C2C talk, a lot of people just focus on the campus side. It's like, well, that's the whole point of C2C, isn't it? That you bring those players to your NFL squad and then create a Studley squad on that side as well. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was in 4 of 4 C2C semifinals. I made one final and I won that final. So I did win one ship this year. I was really hoping for the 4, but that didn't happen. So it cut in fact, one of my teams fell apart and scored like 112 points, which is just almost like even unheard of in C2C. So that was not what I was looking for out of that. But yeah, pretty solid year, and definitely with the Devy heavy approach, I'm bringing players to the call or to the NFL side. So solid year. Aaron, how did you do? Not how are you doing? How did you do in your C2C leagues?
Yeah, pretty well. Won 2 of my 4 leagues, so
The coveted
50%.
Devy U, the coveted Devy
Win
U
rate.
championship, taking over from
Yes,
Andy.
yes. And I feel like both you guys had really solid years in the leagues that I'm in with you. So I was definitely fortunate to have 2 championships and then a third place finish in the other league. So ultimately, I think it was a pretty solid year. There was a lot of last second sweating it. I won my
Mhm.
championship by less than a point, and I made it to the other league championship that I won by .02 points.
Uh-oh. Aaron froze up on me. Hopefully, uh, hopefully he'll be back soon. But I guess they really got him there. He was very nervous with the amount of points that he was going to get. I will say that actually happened to me with my championship. I was projected going into the last game. We both had one player left, or no, I'm sorry. My opponent had one player left. I had no one left to play. I was projected to lose by 15 points. And then as I watched the game progress, it got smaller and smaller and smaller, and then eventually ended up winning by like 5. So there was a lot of close matchups there. But we lost Aaron for a little bit. He's back now. But I was gonna say I'm a little nervous with. I feel like there's a lot of pressure on me and Debbie you now because Andy wins year 1. Now Aaron wins year 2. Like I have to win, right? I have to win year 3, right?
You're next up. You're due.
You're going to have to go all in on CFF against your better judgment just to lock up the championship this year.
I guess so. I think the good news is I actually gained quite a few picks, I believe, because I traded back a decent amount in this last supplemental, and so I think I have extra picks, so I can probably go a little more CFF heavy than maybe I would normally do this year. So maybe that'll all work out for me. But I have a young team, so it'll be interesting to see how that all works out because there's a lot of players that didn't even touch the field or barely touch the field, that kind of thing this year that could easily be studs next year. So it'll be really interested to see what happens there. But enough about our teams. We just wanted to, remind people that we're out there in these streets as well. Doing the whole thing and not just talking about this, but actually going out and trying to win and doing all that. But like I said, we're going to be getting into our yearbook signing here. We're going to get into the most likely to do whatever it is, and we will get into that in just a second. All right, let's dive in. Andy came up with the idea to do the most likely to, and so we have a few different things. Most likely to transfer up, most likely to stay in college, most likely to transfer, most likely to face plant, most likely to be underrated in the 26th class, most likely to rebound from injury, and there might be a couple other ones. Aaron said he had one for us, a specific player that he can get into in a little bit. But Andy, since you came up with the idea, why don't you start us out? What are you feeling?
Oh, I don't know. Let's see. Let's be positive start on a high note and talk about transfers that we think will work out and be good. I think there's an obvious one. I'll let you guys take that one, or maybe you won't. But at some point, I'm sure he'll be mentioned. But one guy that I want to talk about is USF. I think he's a true freshman wide receiver, Jeremiah Koger, who hasn't had like a hugely stellar year. USF has had a great season as a team. Koger, he's sitting at about 500 yards. I think he's a true freshman, but he 6'3", so good size, over 200 pounds, and then he's hitting all those metrics that I like. Yards per route run is over 2.5. He's got a good market share for being so young and new to the program, and his coach is now moving on to Auburn, where you would like to think that he brings some of his guys, some of his players that he really likes into that SEC environment, that system, and tries to see if there's any sort of success he can find there with probably some of the same ingredients that he was having success with at USF. This is a team that I believe they beat Alabama, right? Like this year, or yeah. So this guy can hang with the big dogs, obviously. Now he's going to get a chance to do it with a loaded roster or a loaded NIL collective, whatever. But I have a feeling a guy like Jeremiah Koger is good enough to follow him along and potentially, continue to star and be a solid player at the next level.
Yeah, I don't mind that one. I struggled with trying to find because there's so many names that will or you can and will transfer and everything. So I kind of struggle with some, but that's definitely a name that makes sense. Obviously at a lower level, but doing some pretty big things. And we can say lower level, but USF has definitely been one of the better teams of those lower level schools this year. and so I don't even know that it's quite the same as as say like coming from a different G5 school or whatever it might be. So I don't mind that. He definitely is looking more like the big play kind of guy, and that's what we like to see, especially transferring up. Now, I've definitely come to realize that most of these guys, especially wide receivers transferring up, it just takes another year. So I try not to get too excited about them when they do. So this might be a name that maybe we don't freak out about today or this year, but maybe in 2027 we'll hear his name being mentioned, and all of a sudden he'll be rising up ranks and everything then. So we'll just have to wait and see. Aaron, are you with us? Are you? Do you have one for us?
Yeah, so I'm not the biggest Koger guy just from a film standpoint. I view him as kind of a raw guy when I've watched him. However, I mean there's no denying that he's put out some nice production. I'm a little bit concerned about that jump up if he does follow the coach to the SEC level with some of the talent there, and even if he goes elsewhere, a little bit of concern for that transfer and that jump up. We've discussed that in some previous episodes here in the not so distant past on, things that we learned from this last year. And one of them is, we have to be pretty selective with the guys that we trust to transfer up and still produce. However, he fits some of the criteria that I laid out where he's productive right away. Like he's pretty efficient, he's pretty productive as a true freshman in college. That's a good sign, right? So I could see him having the success that like a Joseph Williams to Colorado after transferring out this last year. A pretty solid season. Obviously was not the alpha there, but the number two type of wide receiver, and he dealt with a couple of things during the year. So yeah, we could see Koger make an impact, and I will take maybe how about I save a guy that I know John really likes, and I will go with Wyatt Young, North Texas wide receiver, for a nice transfer up opportunity. He may follow his coach to Oklahoma State, who knows, but Wyatt Young, very much underrated production this last year. I shouldn't even say underrated. Like if you're playing in Campus to Canton leagues, you very much were aware of this guy was on a heater down the stretch. He was putting teams on his back, and he finished with 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns, easily leading the team in both for receiving production. He's not a small guy. I was a little bit concerned about that at first. Like, is he that small? But he's listed at 6 foot, 195 pounds, and he was even involved and really quite explosive, or at least relevant as a true freshman at North Texas. So I am interested in Wyatt Young. I might have left John a layup there, but I felt that we should probably shout out Young because he has not been mentioned on any of our podcasts.
I like it. I definitely I did not realize, for whatever reason, I didn't have a year in school for Young, and so I just made him a sophomore, and all of a sudden he skyrocketed up Devy, Beth. Yeah, like you said, hitting a 31% market share this year, receiving yards market share, and a lot of other things that you would like to see. Big PPR points per touch, 19.4 yards per reception. So, dude's a big play waiting to happen.
Yes, and he leads all of the college football in yards per route run for people with at least 30 targets at 4.44, which that's like not to like put bad juju on him or anything, but those are like Trey Harris or numbers. Not to say that Trey Harris is nothing yet, but the first year hasn't been the best for him. But he is doing this as a true sophomore, which is obviously different. Yeah, I like Wyatt Young. I'm surprised that I haven't really thought of him as like this transfer up candidate until just right now. But yeah, a true sophomore who is doing pretty incredible things. He had like 300 yards a couple weeks ago. You're talking about C2C playoffs. I'm sure I probably played him in one matchup I was in. So, yeah, if you have him, you're probably feeling pretty good right now, and I would love to see him go up into, even if it is a Big 12 team, but it feels like he could go even higher than that based on what we've seen so far. So I love that call.
Yeah, thanks.
I like it. Like I said,
I did
not
survive
have...
him.
Oh,
as well. Deshanes and Omega had him going against me, I believe, in the championship and the Devy U. But I did survive Wyatt Young, though I was really nervous about it, not going to lie. So, and who else was a yards per route run savant? Lad McConkey. He was very much, that was one metric he really stood out in. So I'm not trying to compare Wyatt Young exactly to that, but again, another guy who's had a pretty good NFL career thus far, that we can point to where that metric has maybe stuck out.
Yeah, I say Wyatt Young is definitely seems to be more of the outside kind of receiver than maybe your slot guy, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But so you guys were saying you're gonna leave me with the obvious one. I guess I can take it, but I actually have a deeper guy, so I don't know if we want to go with the obvious one now or should we go with the deeper one. I'm gonna go with the deeper guy here.
We could all just agree that Caleb Hawkins is the obvious one, right? Is that what we're all thinking?
I was actually I think
I
you
think
could
so.
probably say basically any of the players on North Texas.
Yeah, Mestamaker even doesn't look too bad. I mean,
That's what I'm saying. Mestamaker was the
Right,
guy
yeah.
that I was thinking you guys were talking about.
Maybe I should have just claimed all three of them.
yeah,
Yeah, right.
right.
It's North Texas is transferring up to the no. So I had Drew Mestamaker obviously, but I had and I also had Danny Scudero. I honestly think that he could come out in this class. I don't think he's going to. He kind of fell off towards the end of the season compared to where he was because at the beginning towards the middle of the season, he was high as hell in Devy Beth. I mean, to the point of going like, holy crap, like this is probably one of the highest G5 wide receivers that I've seen in years. And honestly, like the last one that I can remember that was that high was Torrey Horton. And so Scudero, like I said, kind of fell off from there, but he's still way up there. I could see him possibly trying to transfer up, go for he's a true junior, so he can easily do that and try to go somewhere big and really truly make a name for himself. And hopefully he's talented enough to where he's not going to have to take that extra year or whatever to get used to the bigger level and whatever it's going to take. But that is not who I was going to mention as my deep dive. Those are just the two more obvious names to me. I have Jeremy Scott out of South Alabama, a 3-star prospect, 6'3", 198. Obviously, could probably build or fill in that build even more from there. But he was doing some pretty nice things at South Alabama. They only threw for around 2,100 yards this year, and yet he's sitting there with 417 of them as a sophomore, or technically a redshirt freshman, because he redshirted his freshman year, so he didn't play. He actually, for whatever reason, I was trying to look into it. He didn't actually enroll in college until August 5th. So I mean, he didn't even have a chance to to really do anything with the team or anything. Like it was almost like it was a guarantee. I don't know if maybe he was injured. Who knows? But he enrolled August 5th of 24, redshirted the year, came in technically his freshman season now, and just put up big play after big play, 417 yards. I believe was the second leading receiver on the team, but looking at the yards per reception, looking at the PPR points per touch, like I said, the big playability, and the fact that they only won like 4 games, South Alabama. So, he could easily be saying he has a little bit of pedigree. It's not like he was some no name or anything like that with the 3 stars. I'm wondering that with that size, with the obvious speed and everything that he has, showing that big playability, could he transfer up? Obviously no guarantees or anything, but it was just a name that kind of popped up in Devy Beth, and I was like, you know what, that's once I looked into the profile a little more, looked into the size and everything, I said that kind of guy could step up into a better program when it's all said and done.
Nice. Yeah, I do not have any opinions on him, so that's a great name to shout out, John.
Like I said, I figured it was deep.
Yeah, very deep.
Well, when no one knows who the player is, that's when it's always fun. I wonder if I'll see him in Mobile because they obviously do it at the South Alabama. Uh, I cannot remember the name of the complex right now, but they do it at their field, and so it'll be interesting to see if I run into Jeremy Scott when it's all said and done.
All right, should we move on to the next one?
All right. So, well, is that all we had? We had the obvious ones of Messmaker and
I
any
do
other
have a
North
guy
Texas.
that I do have a guy that maybe I just want to mention. I don't think that I feel as strongly about him as some of the guys that we've already talked about, but I want to throw a quarterback out there. Kennesaw State quarterback Amari Odom. He's like a he's like a poor man's John Mateer and even poorer man's Darian Mensah. I don't think he's as good of a passer as either of those guys, but he does offer that rushing upside, and I think maybe some team lower half of like the P4 level could see that and be like, all right, well he can be safe with the ball and he can give us that dynamic running ability to maybe steal some games from some of these bigger teams in our conference. Let's give him a small little NIL package and get him over here. So he's somebody that I would say, he might not even transfer, but if he does, that's a guy that I would be looking at as a potential QB pickup in supplemental drafts.
Yeah, I don't hate that. He's definitely at a lower level, putting up quality numbers. Aaron gives a thumbs up, so we are ready to move on. Let's move on. Aaron, you want to move us on to the next most likely to do what?
Ooh, most likely to be a bust this next year in 2026 in college football. Who is the most likely to be a bust? And I'll open it up to either one of you guys if you'd like to lead it off. Otherwise, I have some ideas here.
Well, I could give mine right now, and this is maybe not. People are probably gonna not be pleased with this one, and it's maybe nothing even against the player, but just where he's being drafted, and that's Michigan quarterback Bryce Underwood, who's still being valued as a top 12, let's say, C2C asset, but probably even higher than that in most circles. And I just don't feel like he's done anything this year to tell us that that is a fair assessment or a good way to value him at this point in time. Like, he finished the year with 9 passing touchdowns and he played every single game to 6 interceptions. The yards per attempt aren't there. The ADOT's not there. Like, sure, he has some plays where with his feet that he looked great, but it's not like he's running for 1,000 yards or anything. Like, he's like, even Diego Pavia is offering you more rushing upside than Bryce Underwood. And just the history that we've seen with overvaluing these 5-star quarterbacks that we loved as prospects, like Jackson Arnold or Connor Wigman, and then it doesn't work out in that second year or third year whenever they've are supposed to put it all together, and then they don't put it together, and then all of a sudden you're left with nothing. That's what I fear for Bryce Underwood. Now, I could be completely wrong, but I think that where he's at right now, value-wise, is kind of being negligent, especially if you're just starting a league, which is what these rankings kind of are for, is like a C2C startup. If you're building your entire college roster essentially around Bryce Underwood, that's putting a lot of eggs in a basket that might not really pan out in the long run. So I will choose him as my most overrated or most likely to bust and the other thing is, like, the Michigan offense is just never going to do a quarterback any favors. So he just has a lot working against him, and I wouldn't be willing to invest in that sort of, predicament, I guess.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I mean, like would you say he had 9 touchdowns on the year and 6 interceptions? I mean, what are we hoping for? Like 14 touchdowns next year? Like, woo, So I definitely am underwhelmed. That being said, there's not that many. Well, okay, so it does seem like the 2028 QB class is getting a lot of love right now. Now we know from experience that like at least half of those guys are falling off next year, like or in the very near future. It's impossible. That never happens where like every guy's a stud. I think more what we're seeing is there's so few good QBs in this draft class and even in the 27 draft class that people are like, "Oh my God, these guys are actually okay." So we like let's push them up. And honestly, that's what's happened in Debbie Beth as well. Like I think I'd mentioned, Bryce Underwood was my QB7 overall right now, but that doesn't mean that I love Bryce Underwood or that like I'm going to go out of my way to trade for him or pick him up or draft him at 103 overall in a startup or anything like that. So, obviously we're not saying, well, at least I don't want to put words in Andy's mouth. I don't think he's saying he's an absolute bust, like he's terrible, guy couldn't possibly be good or anything, but at that price, what you're paying for, especially if you're considering campus, the campus side and like what you're actually getting on the campus side, it's probably not great. And then even if you're just talking about Devy, you're probably talking about a long wait and hoping and praying that he just takes a giant leap forward before he possibly makes it to the NFL.
Yeah, he certainly has the ability to take a big leap. But again, we really have to take a leap of faith ourselves, assuming that he will do so, right? We assume that for so many young guys, and they don't always take that step. So certainly has the tools. That'll be an interesting one to see how it plays out. And we've mentioned some pretty high, well, that's a pretty high-end player, right, in the college football landscape and Devy ranks and all of that. I'm curious if John is going to keep the trend going here with, most likely to bust candidates. I have two players. I wonder if John's going to snipe me with one of them here.
I don't think so. I honestly struggled with this one, and I did not come up with anything good. This is boring. This is not fair to do, but I'm going to do it anyway because I called it out last year, and I'm just going to do it again. It's Eugene Wilson. People were way too high on him. I'm hoping at this point that it can just be over. That like we're not going to have any more hype for him. But I know how the Devy and C2C community work, and and so I think that Eugene Wilson is an obvious one. I just got a chat of who I should do. You know what? I probably could do that one as well. It's the Alabama version of Eugene Wilson and Latsier Brooks. So I'll go ahead and throw that out there as well. I think that Latsier Brooks is going to be. He's just overrated. I mean, like we've seen it. We talked with Felix last week about how Felix loves him and was like, you got to put him up there. We've seen a lot of the C2C boys who were all over him in the offseason be like, no, he's still my wide receiver 2 in the class, and it's like, but why? What has he done? And he honestly, like all kidding aside, he's doing a lot of things that we saw Zachariah Branch do. He's doing a lot of things that we saw Eugene Wilson do. There's a reason why I pick these players and say that I don't like them, and it's because they all do the same freaking thing, and then they all bust. So, yeah, I'm leaning towards. I mean, I guess the only thing you could say about Latsier Brooks is that he's young, and that I guess he could obviously change or become better. I think we had definitely seen more with Eugene Wilson that it was like we knew who he was. So I don't want to put Latsier there just yet, but I'll go ahead and do it just for for the fun of it as well.
I like it. I fed that one. Or teed you up and hit it out of the park.
I'll be honest, I forgot that Eugene Wilson was even still in college until you just said that. I was like, didn't he go like undrafted last year? But here we are.
Yeah, I really struggled because I mean there's not that many players that I think of and I go, oh well, he's just so overrated right now, because so many of those players that are overrated I think are going to be hitting the NFL draft. And so I'm thinking towards next year, and I'm like, it's a lot of young players, and that's why I really didn't even go with like the young players like Brooks, and that's Aaron had to team me up so that I could actually get the right take out there. But like there's just so many players that I'm like, unless they come back to school, then they're probably going to be overrated in the NFL draft, not necessarily overrated for Devy or C2C purposes.
All right. Well, I am up then to call out the most likely to bust player. This one's not going to be popular out there, but I'm going to do it anyways because this wasn't really like an early off-season talk or anything, but this was just prior to this season, and I called out Lenora Sellers as a guy who would potentially bust this season, and that was very unpopular at the time. You know, he was projected to be a top 3 quarterback in all of college football and Devy purposes and whatnot. And not that he's completely fallen off, but he definitely had a down year. There's no doubt about that. And there's just some issues at the quarterback position in general in college, but that's a different discussion. But one guy that I'm going to call a bust, though he's being called a top 5 back in college football for this upcoming season, and that's Kewan Lacey, Ole Miss running back. And this is not necessarily for CFF purposes. We have a Devy specific focus for NFL projection on this podcast, so I acknowledge that he could put up some decent production next year. But he could also be a big-time miss. We're projecting a lot of volume for him next year. First of all, we don't know what Ole Miss is going to look like. We don't know ultimately. Kewan Lacey, is he going to stay there? Whatever the case is, Lane Kiffin, just left for that LSU job. And yeah, we just don't know. But Kewan Lacey, if we look at the player himself, he's been very volume dependent. A lot of carries this season, and we say, hey, that's a good thing for fantasy production. But we want to dive deeper when we identify, is this guy a real prospect, like a real high-end guy? I mean, his career yards per carry is 4.9. That's not great. You want to look at the receiving? It's not explosive. It's not anything special. He has no receiving touchdowns. Surprisingly, he has 20 rushing touchdowns this season. That really propped up his scoring, so artificially makes him look like a superstar. He had 258 carries this season. That's a lot in 12 games. Ultimately, he was a workhorse. He was effective enough, that's for sure. I just don't see the special aspects of a Kewan Lacey's profile ultimately after he really didn't do anything at Missouri as a true freshman. So, it was great that he had that awesome production in this very fantasy-friendly Ole Miss system. I just don't know if we see that coming. And you know who else had like high-end projections coming into this year based off volume? A lot of guys who busted. Anthony Hankerson, Demond Claiborne, Mekhi Hughes, Dylan Edwards. You go down the list. Oh, yeah, they're going to get tons of volume. Are they good players is another question, or like special talents. And you could argue that some of them were, some of them had bad luck this year with injuries or otherwise, but just something we should be aware of. I think Kewan Lacey could be a bust, at least for Devy purposes next year.
Yeah, he was a guy that I was like kind of on the fence with, and you guys kind of talked me down to your side a little bit, and then, I was looking at it just this weekend actually after last game. He did drop below one of the marks that I look for, which is breakaway yards per attempt, which is the amount of yards you have that are over on carries of 15 yards or more. And his breakaway yards per attempt dropped below 2, which I hate to see. So without the receiving profile, this type of running back just doesn't succeed in the NFL. Like, you need to either be one, the other, or both. Like, you got to be an explosive runner, or you got to be a decent runner with really good receiving capabilities, or have both of those things. Like Travion Henderson was one that did both really well. And he just doesn't really have everything that you want. So he's, I struggle to call him a plodder because I think he does do more than just plod. He does have the ability to break off those 15, 20-yard plays, but like he's the electric 80-yard touchdowns just aren't really in his repertoire at this point, and it doesn't seem like it's ever going to be. So I'm with you at this point. I don't think he's ever going to be like a top of the class running back. He's always just going to be like a high volume guy who's going to score a lot of points for your C2C college team. But after that, you're just hoping for, he ends up in a favorable roster situation in the NFL, like a Cam Scatterbu or something, where he can get some touches early.
I don't know if it's uh I don't know if it's the bourbon or what, but when you said I don't know if he necessarily plods or whatever you said. That just got me. That got me good. I had to mute my mic.
Plods.
Yeah.
I didn't know what else to call it.
Well, I mean, if you're a plodder, you have to plod, correct? I mean,
I mean, right? That would just make sense.
actually, you know what? You did give me time to come up with another one though, and it's Keywan Lacey's twin brother, Jaden Baugh, is my bust. He is very similar, numbers wise, metrics wise, and everything to Lacey. And honestly, I feel like they're both getting like similar levels of hype. I guess you could say that obviously the only thing that you could give Baugh a little credit for is that Florida's been terrible, and so like he's been doing it on a terrible team and everything. But I don't know that I'm giving him that much credit. But it's just, I mean, he plods. I mean, that's what Baugh does. He plods. And I think that people are just way overly excited about players who can get 30 touches in a game, a la like an Emmett Johnson or somebody like that, and then they go, oh, like he's an absolute stud. It's like, no, 4.9 yards per carry, whatever it might be. Dude plods.
Baugh is
that's
even. Sorry, I was
He
just real quick. I
paused.
was just gonna say Baugh is even worse than Lacey for plotting. He's like his breakaway yards per attempt is just over 1, which is horrible. Uh, yeah, I mean, even if you are hitting that 7.5% breakaway run rate, like you gotta turn some of those 15-yard runs into 60, 70-yard runs, and that just doesn't happen for him.
Yeah, that's the tough thing about Boss Profile is that breakaway speed, right? Just not there. At the college level, the guy's a bruiser, great vision, great ability to move, surprisingly laterally for his size. He's a capable receiver. He really has it all, and except one of the most important things at the running back position, and that's the high end athleticism and definitely the long speed to break off big plays. And he's just more of that grinder bruiser. Unfortunately, though he has a lot of individual skills, which make him a very very good player for Florida. Somebody that they can use to grind out wins. And he was so impressive this last weekend, having watched that game and had him on my fantasy team. I was cheering for him every run, and he was a beast. But for him to be successful, he will have to be in like the perfect system. You think of like a Le'Veon Bell type of system, and he'd have to perfectly mesh within that to, I think, make a successful fantasy career at the NFL level. Like he could get there because he has a lot of interesting skills, but he needs to be carried again by the system. And I just don't project that he's going to get more athletic. That's a hard thing to do after multiple years in college, saying this guy's just not a great athlete. Do you expect him to suddenly become explosive? I don't know. Maybe he loses 10 pounds, proves us wrong, but I think it's a fair call out, though it hurts very much because I want to like Jaden Baugh.
Hey, but to your credit, I just went and looked at CampusToCanton.com's Devy rankings just to see, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't being crazy here. I've heard so much hype about Jaden Baugh. I wanted to make sure that I was accurate with that, and I would definitely say right now they have the consensus rankings has Jaden Baugh as the RB 14 overall. And then I looked at Aaron's ranks. He has Keywan Lacey at 30 overall, and he has Jaden Baugh at 25 overall. So he's definitely the lowest of everyone at C2C on Jaden Baugh and Keywan Lacey. But that makes me feel even better about my call. They're basically twins at this point, and unfortunately Keywan Lacey is also 13th overall on their consensus rankings. So, I mean, not top 10, not amazing or anything like that, but definitely getting hype. And I mean, if you've been on Twitter, I'm sure you've seen Keywan Lacey getting a lot of hype, and I feel like Jaden Baugh's gotten quite a bit as well. So, no one that I will be overly excited about having. I'm glad that I was able to come up with something better than Eugene Wilson when it was all said and done. Do we have any more busts? Or are we moving on to the next one?
I think we can move on.
Moving on, let's go to most likely to stay in college one more year. I guess I'll start this off. I think, and this is going to be controversial, it shouldn't be. I think it's going to be Ty Simpson, especially after this past week. He was just god awful this past week. But I mean, honestly, he's been fairly bad the entire season. So it's not even like I don't even know why he is being brought up or being mentioned in draft circles and all that kind of stuff. Besides the fact that these teams are just starved for QB talent, and he's at Alabama. That's the only thing I can come up with. It makes no sense. I've always had my doubts about Fernando Mendoza, but at least he was always grading out pretty well. Ty Simpson's never graded out well. He's never looked good. This is his first year of starting in college. How many people, whether it's draft analysts, whether it's coaches, whether it's GMs, how many people have made a point to say you need to hit 25 or more games in college before we can truly trust you in the NFL, or for you to be a quality QB in the NFL, that kind of thing. Ty Simpson has not done that. And so, like I said, maybe it's controversial here. I don't think it should be. I think Ty Simpson's going back, especially after this past week. I don't think anything's going to get better in the playoffs as they play better and better teams. I don't see him like magically doing anything that's going to be like, oh yeah, now he's ready. So I think Ty Simpson is going back for one more year, and then to add on to the take, I think it's going to be a Carson Beck level of going back one more year where he falls off the face of the planet, and then people go, man, he should have come out.
Yeah, he's not been very sharp of late, that's for sure.
I mean, the thing is, too, a game like last week against Auburn, everyone just, they look at the box score and they say, oh, he had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, they won the game. He probably played pretty well, but he didn't. Like, he had he had 35 passing attempts and only threw for 120 yards. Like, that isn't good. It was good enough on that day, but if you're going to be a pro quarterback, yeah, Auburn's got a good defense, but you got to do better than that. You got to make some better, do more for your offense, especially this late in the season. You're basically playing. It's a playoff game. Like, if they lose that game, they're out of the playoffs, or they're out of the SEC championship for sure. So yes, they won. They did enough to win. Alabama was clearly a superior team, but for a guy who's supposed to be a Heisman favorite at some points during this season, I just wasn't seeing it. And then the 2 weeks before that, it wasn't great either. I think he had like 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions in the previous 2 weeks. So it's been a rough stretch for him. I could definitely see him coming back. And I think he should. I think, Dante Moore, another guy who's getting top 5 draft capital talk. I know he didn't say personally, but a lot of people said he's going to stay another year. And now they're saying, oh, maybe draft analysts are just going to keep projecting him there until he says it personally. Both of those guys, I feel like, are guys that should just come back because they haven't done enough to prove that they are NFL ready just yet. Like, just stay in college another year. You're getting paid anyhow. Like, what's the rush?
Yeah, that's all fair. And I guess I will provide a little bit of context to Ty Simpson. Like, the previous week he was out, Jeremy Bernard was out, and then this last week his starting tight end and Ryan Williams didn't play, or at least I don't believe Ryan Williams played, or if he did, it was, basically just a series and he was out, and Jeremy was coming off of that injury. So it's like, yeah, he's down his 3 best weapons. And then the guy that we called a likely bust next year in Lutzer Brooks, not exactly dealing with, your typical all-star, players there, but it's definitely not elevating his stock, right? It just goes to the point of he still didn't perform, still didn't look good enough to continue that hype train that was going on from early to middle season. So I think that one's good. I honestly have quite a few players here that I might actually want to shout out here. Maybe I will defer to somebody else here just
I have 4. So I had Simpson and I have 3 others. So maybe you guys will knock some of them off the list and we can talk about the last couples. But who do you have, Andy?
I'll just say one that I have, and it's my guy, my boy, and I hope it for his sake. Ian Strong stays another year and hopefully goes to a different program, because not that Rutgers hasn't been good to him. I just feel like he could step up the level of competition, or not even the level of competition, but just step up the supporting cast around him and be like the number one for a better team. And KJ Duff is going to be at Rutgers. He might transfer out too, honestly. And both of those guys are good receivers. But Ian Strong, he's been dealing with injuries this past half of the season. Um, he's improved from a year before from a yardage standpoint, but I think there's still room to grow and room to, you know, improve your draft stock if you stay another year. And I don't think it hurts him if he does stay. And like I said with Dante Moore and the other, like you're gonna get paid. I think he's upped his profile enough that one of these elite teams would be interested in a guy like him to fill in for whoever's leaving, maybe like a Tennessee or something with Chris Brazell going out the door. Like, hey, let's bring in this kid from Rutgers or something, something like that. So I'm gonna say Ian Strong, even though I love Ian Strong. If he does go pro, I'm gonna be singing his praises. But I think let's see if he stays another year and maybe goes someplace to elevate himself a little bit.
That's a fun shout out. I mean, imagine Ian Strong going to Alabama, like becoming, that next guy there in tandem with Ryan Williams, who's had a down year. I mean, Ian Strong could carve out a very, very strong share there. But I mean, you could make the case that, KJ Duff could also go to a lot of teams and also be a pretty high-end receiver. And I thought you were going to go with Hollywood Smothers there, Andy, one of your boys as well. But because I could honestly see him returning. Like, he hasn't had a bad year. He just hasn't finished with the most profound breakout. The breakout was more the early to middle season for Hollywood Smothers at NC State. So I could see him returning, even though it is kind of a down running back class. They could probably use him. I just don't know if he'll get a lot of draft capital, all those types of things.
That was the only reason why I didn't go with Hollywood or someone like that, is just because it's such a down class. Like, I feel like they're starved for, I mean, maybe not starved after this past year draft class, but I still think that there's only, I only have three guys as like my top tier guys. And so, like that's not too many. You lose one of those and the class looks so much worse. So I definitely wouldn't love it if he goes back, but obviously in this day and age, it's not that unbelievable either. I kind of had some similar guys, maybe not, hopefully better talents, but I had Eric Singleton Jr. Obviously, like we've all seen what happened this year. He transferred up. It was like probably the worst possible move he could have made. The QB play was just atrocious. He had Cam Coleman ahead of him, or at least along with him. And there was games where he outplayed Coleman, but there were obviously games where Coleman outplayed him. But you're just dealing with that level of competition with a terrible QB. It's really difficult to like make your mark or anything like that. I could easily see Singleton going back, but I mean, I could easily see him coming out and just being like, "Hey, I've done enough." The NFL knows what was going on this year. I'm doing it anyway. And then Nick Harbor, I think that one's kind of obvious. I don't think as much as people were trying to push him into, into like the first round and stuff earlier in the season. Me and Andy always joked about how like every mock draft in the off season was like Nick Harbor, wide receiver 1, and it was so much fun. But I think that one's kind of obvious as well. I think we could easily see Harbor and Sellers both transferring out to different spots. But then the one that I think is probably not obvious, the last one I have, is Jacoby Lane, and I think that he's still getting a lot of draft hype from people, but like, go look at what he did this year. I get that Mekhi Lemon gets all of the love and everything from USC, but he did not have a good year. And he dealt with injuries and things, but I think he's kind of always had that, miss a game here, miss a game there, whatever. I really feel like he needs to, if he really wants to be anything or be drafted well, I feel like he needs to go back another year and try to make a name for himself that way. Maybe, Lincoln Riley or USC or whatever can be like, hey, we're losing Lemon, but we can keep you and you can be the stud next year, that kind of thing. Or he can transfer out and go somewhere else and possibly do it that way. But I really have a strong feeling that Lane's going to stay when it's all said and done.
Yeah, no, that's fair with Jacoby. I mean, he hasn't had the strongest season, like you said, and I think the talent's there, but he's got to take a step forward. Like he just has not put out much besides being like a contested catch type of guy, and he has certainly the opportunity if he stays at USC for one more year, assuming that Mekhi Lemon leaves, which he should, right? We all anticipate that. So I will add two more names here. A guy that we are excited for, big, tall receiver that we've shouted out here on the podcast, Deuce Robinson at FSU. So at Florida State, I could see him staying for one more year. He has had a good year. He did not cap it off with a very good performance this last week. Not that that's going to be the end all be all. He could still declare, he could still do well in the combine and pre-draft process and all that. But I think there is a chance that he wants to stick it out one more year and really show to everybody he is a force in college football. And then our boy, Jace Brown, Kansas State. Unfortunately, he's just dealt with some injury that kept him out for the rest of the season. That's not the way you want to be trending if you're going to declare for the NFL draft. So Jace Brown is good enough, but I don't know that he actually will declare in this class.
Looks like John's headphones just died, so while he gets that situation figured out, I think the only other one we had on here was best or most likely to be a sleeper in the 2026 NFL class. I had a couple guys. One that I want to bring up, and I don't even know that I'm that thrilled about this player, but I do think that he has had a really good season this year, and enough to intrigue me to see what happens at the next level. Unfortunately, I think he's like a sixth-year player. It's Arkansas running back Mike Washington, who has just consistently been at the top of like the big time run rate percentage and yards per route run as a receiver. He's got good size, having a good season. Unfortunately, he's just done nothing prior to this season. So, well, I shouldn't say that. He played at like Buffalo in the MAC and a few other places where he's been kind of okay, like 600 yards here, 600 yards there, decent seasons, and then really popped this year, which I think I want to say it's either his fifth or sixth year. So obviously an older prospect, but he's a guy that I would be interested in if we're talking like fourth, or if your dynasty leagues go even to like a fifth round. If he does get like later draft capital, because I don't expect him to be a day two guy, but maybe like a sixth or seventh round guy in the right situation is somebody that I would be interested in.
There you go. That was not a name that I had pulled, so that's a good pull there. Though I've just always been skeptical of him. I don't know if I was always just hesitant about the transfer up, or maybe like his earlier career difficulties. But he really has had a pretty good year. I mean, I was again not thinking that he would ultimately pan out, but Washington's done some good things. I will make the case for my sleeper here in the 2026 rookie class, and that is Omarion Miller, Colorado wide receiver. He's quietly had a very, very solid season for a third-year guy. Now, he's been banged up. There's been injuries his first 2 years in college, so I understand why his profile is a little bit bare bones there. But this year, he did miss one game, but otherwise, he's been very consistent, the clear number one for Colorado. We know how their passing game has just really struggled this year between starting Salter and starting a true freshman, and just the struggles that they have had. They only threw for a total of 2,434 receiving yards, okay? And Omari Miller had 800.
Yeah, I guess we lost Aaron now too. But I think what he was about to say is that Omarion Miller had a 33% market share in receiving yards, which very exciting despite Colorado's offensive woes. I like Omarion Miller too. Again, yards per route run, which is the metric I go by. He's clearing that 2 yards per route run spot. So I love the call out, but Aaron's back with us now, so I'll let him finish his thought.
Sorry about that, guys, cutting out there, but I just think that Omarion Miller, he's he's shown the big play abilities, the touchdown scoring, the holding down that wide receiver core, and not just doing a solid job, doing an excellent job this season with what he's been dealing with at the quarterback position. So, you know, you kind of have to look past maybe some of the previous injury concerns there. He has to clear those medicals, and he has another year if he wants it. So he could be another guy we could mention staying in college one more year. But I just think that if he declares in this class, he's not maybe going to get a lot of credit, but he is a true sleeper who could go, you know, maybe on late day 2, early day 3, and kind of make an impact in dynasty rookie drafts, potentially selecting Amarian Miller in that 4th round or so. I mean, that could be a nice sleeper selection for teams out there looking for somebody under the radar.
Now, Aaron, you're saying this is a sleeper for the draft class. I mean, he's only a junior, right? A true junior. Are you sure that he's coming out, or are you just saying if he does come out?
Yeah, more so if he's coming out. You know, this is one of those ones where we don't really know yet. It's like there should be some caveats to some of the takes that we've had tonight. Just, you know, assuming that the guys stay in college, and most of the guys we've talked about have been clear, like cannot declare yet, or they are likely to declare. So yes, there is kind of that unique opportunity there for Miller where he can go, you know, back to college, or he can just declare. I think there's, you know, some momentum. He could certainly build off of that for another season there, building rapport at Colorado. But there's some uncertainties maybe on, like, you know, Dion sticking around, or, you know, just maybe what the future is at that school. So I'm saying if he declares, he could certainly be in that sleeper category. But who knows if Omarion Miller will ultimately stay, go otherwise.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I guess I would probably lean more towards him going back at this point, but I mean, the class he can come out, and you know he's definitely, and I will say, like, he is substantially higher than I ever would have probably given him credit for in Devy Beth. You know, I really don't pay attention to Colorado or, you know, anything that they do. I know obviously people were so hyped about like the two Miller brothers there, Amarian and Draylon, and I kind of had a feeling that at the very least one of them always had to bust. Like one of them was going to bust, if not both of them. And so maybe that kind of made me feel like both of them were going to bust. And now, you know, Miller's, like I said, pretty damn high in Devy Best. So I cannot hate on that sleeper pick at all. Like I said, maybe I would probably lean towards him going back. But you know, I think if he does, it would probably even make a better case, assuming he's on a decent squad. Like you said, who knows what's happening with Colorado? But assuming he's on a decent squad, you know, maybe he can even make a better case and be even, you know, higher up in our ranks and not be a sleeper in the 2027 class. But who knows? I have a guy. So, all right. So I thought we were going more like underrated players and stuff. And so I went with Deuce Robinson originally because, I mean, I think he's got to be the most underrated player in the 2026 class. Like Aaron said, there's no guarantee that he's coming out. I think he should. I mean, I don't know why he wouldn't at this point, unless the NFL is just not catching on. But I think that FSU is enough in the limelight to where like the NFL can at least be like, hey, this guy's a stud, you know, like, and he's not slowing down. Like he's, you know, he's just getting better, like we were talking about before. But I think that regardless if he comes out, even if he doesn't come out, I think he's just underrated for whatever reason. People just want to say that he's just a speed threat and everything. But I think we've seen that, like, you don't get that except for with like your Tennessee guys and stuff like that. You don't get those like 100 yards every week, every single week out of guys that are just the deep threats. You know, you get your more you know, hit or miss, like yes or no kind of deal, not like every single week 10 receptions, 140 yards, and blah, blah, blah. And that's what we're seeing from Deuce. But if we're going with a true sleeper, which is more where Aaron and Andy went here, I'm going to go with a true sleeper here. And this is a player that I've been a sleeper on all throughout college, like basically his entire college career. I've been like, hey, this guy's going to be a stud. And I guess it worked out for like CFF purposes and stuff like that, especially the past year. But I've never heard a single person mention his name for Devy purposes, for the NFL draft, or anything like that. So I'm going to mention him as like my last round kind of dart throw kind of player, and that's Cyrus Allen out of Cincinnati, right? I just wanted to make sure he's transferred like 3 times. So Cyrus Allen out of Cincinnati, yes, that's where he was. He was with Louisiana Tech, and then I think he was somewhere else before he even went to Cincinnati. Maybe I'm wrong there, but big play threat. Like I said, he always hit when he was at Louisiana Tech. He was up, skyrocketing up Devy Beth as a CUSA player, and I'm going, man, this guy's kind of exciting. Like he was young, and it was just like, just give him a shot, just give him a shot. And then he transfers up and he does nothing. But then now this year he's looked more like maybe not a stud, but he's definitely looked more like a player. He led Cincinnati in receiving, if I remember correctly. The A dot, the big time, or I'm sorry, the yards per reception, like everything is right where I want to see it. The PPR points per touch, all that kind of stuff. It took a year from him moving up, and that's why I said I've learned that over the years, that with these wide receivers it takes that extra year. But now as a true senior, he's showing out and everything. I don't think there's any reason. Maybe he can do a redshirt year or something like that. I don't know. Maybe he can come back. I don't think there's any reason why he would or can. So I think he would have to try to go to the NFL, and that's why he is like my true deep sleeper, Cyrus Allen out of Cincinnati.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, Jim. Cyrus Allen, he moved to the slot like almost exclusively this year, which I feel like that kind of helped him out a little bit. But yeah, I mean he's doing well from like the yards per route run standpoint, which is what I like. Those first 2 years at La Tech were great. Upward trajectory. If you just imagine that he never went to Texas A&M. Then yes, things would be, he'd be in a good spot. But right now, yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's got another like a redshirt year because of that 2024 season. He only had 18 catches. Maybe he still qualifies to use a redshirt that year. I don't know.
Aaron, we got a pup sighting, and what do you think of my Allen call?
Yeah. I feel kind of similarly to how I felt about Andy's Mike Washington pick there. It's like, I don't know that they're guys that I love.
I think you muted yourself.
Or you just unplugged your microphone. Oh
yeah,
no!
I think the pup unplugged your microphone. We're off the rails tonight.
I want to throw another sleeper in real quick. Wide receiver Cooper Barkate for Duke, who
that's a good one.
Was a big FCS guy at Harvard. He had like big D1 offers and chose to go to Harvard, probably to get a better education, I would imagine, because he's probably like, there's no way I'm going to be an NFL player, but he might be. He's showing out at Duke. He's a big play threat. I imagine he's got good athletic ability because he is that top off the defense type of player. I would, I tweeted about him earlier. I said like Cooper Barkade is like what people want Denzel Boston to be. And I think he might be a better version of Denzel Boston. So he's going to be a discount guy. That's why he's a sleeper. I think he's going to get decent draft capital. Maybe not day 2, but probably like early day 3. Let's say 4th round pick. And that's good enough for me to take a shot on him in like the 3rd or 4th round of rookie drafts. Probably 4th round pick. But if it's in a good situation and you're getting, good press and media about him, maybe you do reach on him a little bit.
You'll never guess who is literally tied with Cyrus Allen and Devy Beth. It's Cooper Barkate or Barkate, however you want to say it. I'm not even kidding. They are .888 in Devy Beth to the 1,000th decimal place. They are tied, and now I will say Barkate is technically ahead of him for whatever reason. I don't know how that works, but I guess it's probably alphabetical at that point, I guess. But yeah, they are literally tied, so I like that as a sleeper call as well.
I like it. I don't know if you can hear me, but That's a solid call. There we go. We're back. We're back. Since I'm back, I'm so excited, and we're over the hour. Oops. Quick rapid fire. Who is most likely to be the next Jeremiah Love in college football? Somebody give me a name.
Oh, I got one. I got one.
Ooh, nice.
Anais Williams.
From Notre Dame.
Yep.
Wow. Nice.
I
Nice.
don't know. I can't think of anybody because it would have to be someone that didn't do much as a freshman, then had a really big year this year, and no names are sticking out for me.
You can back up a year or two. So you can go to somebody who just finished a freshman season that was underwhelming that you still believe in.
Oh, maybe you want me to say Gideon Davison here, so I'll throw that
if
name
you-
out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Let's-
that's relevant if you believe
You know,
in
I
it for
didn't
sure.
I didn't like what Gideon did this year, but I also don't feel like he got a good enough opportunity to show us anything. So maybe that's the same thing that happened with Jeremiah Love. Although I felt like I liked what Jeremiah Love did as a freshman, even in a small sample size. I don't feel the same way about Gideon Davidson right now. But I still have enough of him where I want to hope that he's going to be the next Jeremiah Love.
No, I think that's a fair call. I mean, for me, if I was going that route, it would be Osmain Chroma at FSU, who's just not really been unleashed this year, but we've seen it in spurts. He's been elusive, he's been pretty explosive, but he's not really broken off the big time plays, not really been involved as much as a goal line threat. He's been involved as a receiver, so I think there's a lot going for Chroma. How different would things be if he was at instead of Bo Jackson, if he was at Ohio State? Because I want to say at one point in the recruitment, maybe that was flipped, where Chroma was at some point interested in going to Ohio State. I think we'd be talking about Chroma in a much different fashion or way. But that's not my pick here. That's if I was going a freshman who's been, maybe under the radar or not that great. My guy to be the next Jeremiah Love type of stud, Wayshawn Parker, Utah running back. Parker has been very, very explosive this year. Not the huge fantasy production weeks, week in and week out, because he's dealing with not one, but two rushing quarterbacks who are just vulturing a lot of touchdowns and opportunities for him on the ground. He's not been a workhorse, but he has been a very clear, explosive rusher consistently for that team. He has enough of a receiving profile where I think he's got a pretty bright future. A guy who's transferred up in competition and still killed it. So that shows that the talent is legit. It wasn't just like I did some good things at a G5 level as a freshman. He's shown that, okay, going to Utah, being now earning that lead back role, Wayshawn Parker has shown us some good things. I think there's some more future breakout potential there with him, though he's not in quite the illustrious and very forgiving situation that Jeremiah Love is in.
Yeah, I like it. Parker's kind of just been sitting in the middle of Devy Beth's ranks, like not really moving up or down, just kind of right there. Not necessarily what I would call a stud, but definitely hits all the thresholds and everything. And that's kind of how I felt about Jeremiah Love. So I mean, like before he took his step forward. So maybe Wayshawn Parker can do that if that's what you're going for. I said Anais Williams obviously for the Notre Dame connection there, but even then, I mean, we saw this past week he had 10 attempts. Now they were destroying Stanford for obvious reasons. It's Notre Dame, but he had 10 rushes for 83 yards and 2 touchdowns and 2 receptions for 40 yards. Now, this year, he only has those 2 receptions. They haven't used him as a receiver at all. But last year, he actually had 18 receptions for 172 yards, on top of 34 attempts for 219 yards, 6.4 yards per attempt, and 2 touchdowns. So we already saw him get some touches as a freshman. We saw Kedron Young tears ACL or whatever he did. I forget exactly what he did, but he tore something. And so who knows when exactly he'll be healthy. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are gone, we're assuming, at this point. So, who's going to be there? It's going to be Anais Williams. And, I mean, whoever – I know Aaron said that they had, like, a decent recruit this year that obviously hasn't done too much, but who knows if he'll be able to take a step forward. Like I said, we have no idea if Keidron Young's going to be fully healthy. Is he going to be the same player? As much as I loved him, we've seen a lot of these players, take another year or whatever to get back to the athleticism that they need. And I don't see Notre Dame really going away. It's just like being a terrible team all of a sudden. So, and I really do wonder. I was never the biggest Nias Williams fan, as a recruit, but things have worked out in his favor, and so it's kind of hard to like hate the player right now. And at 13.1% big time run rate, albeit in smaller samples and everything, but we've seen it for 2 years now in small samples. When he's on the field, he makes big plays, and so I kind of like him as a player. I'm trying to get thrown in, like Aaron tried to throw him into one of our deals to steal him away from me. I'm trying to get him thrown into deals and get him on the cheap before next year, and people go, "Oh wait, he's the guy now."
I thought of another one for the next Jeremiah Love. Bit of a longer shot, but I think AK or Ackland Deer at Alabama might not be getting enough attention. And John should love him from a PPR points per touch standpoint because he only has had 20 carries and scored 3 touchdowns, and he catches the ball. If he gets more of an opportunity, because nobody on Alabama could run the ball this year besides AK Deer, and they only gave him the ball 20 times. If that, it was 6. It wasn't even 20 times, I don't think. So if he can bust out and with a large volume, then he kind of fits that bill of a second year breakout. Although his freshman season wasn't even as good as Jeremiah Love's, who didn't have. I think he only had 300 some yards as a freshman. But AK Deer, he's doing all right for when he gets the opportunity, and he's a guy that really was not valued highly coming in as a freshman, despite being the 247. All the services had him as a top 5 running back. He was not valued very highly among C2C circles for whatever reason.
Yeah, I really want the AK Deer or Ackland Deer breakout to happen. It's just kind of interesting that it's 2 very productive bursts or outbursts, whatever you want to say, this season. We're in games where they won 73-0 and 56-0. So it's one of those deals where it's I don't know exactly what we're looking at here from a production standpoint, but I will go back to high school and say that I was definitely interested in him, like a guy who's slashing back, who's kind of explosive, but got enough size to him. Could be the next guy up at Alabama. So from a player standpoint, I really like it. From a production standpoint, I'm I just don't know what to take away. But Alabama doesn't have explosive lead guy, so can he develop into that? Absolutely. And I think the same thing with Aeneas Williams at Notre Dame is that he can be that next guy depending on who's going to be there next year. I mean, Jadarian Price, I believe he has 1 more year of eligibility. Is that correct? But he could easily declare. Who knows? Nobody knows.
Hey, if you guys remember, especially Aaron, we talked about the recruits more than Andy. Wasn't as involved with that. That's not his focus as much. But you remember how much I was like, why don't people like Kylan Deer? Why don't people like AK Deer? And it just seemed like he was just a forgotten recruit. And, it's we've seen Alabama running backs take time to be able to do anything. We saw that with Jamarian Miller. It took him a couple of years before he really got his shot. And unfortunately, he's dealt with injury and everything else and not being a good running back. But, there's been it seems like the Alabama guys always take an extra year. It's oh yeah, they should get their shot, but they don't get their shot, and then all of a sudden they're a junior, and you go, oh, now he's a stud, so that kind of thing. So yeah, and Andy completely nailed it. The PPR points per touch are through the roof for AK, and so AK with his 19 touches, and I've tried to build it in to make it as realistic as possible, but AK with his 19 touches, what he's done so far on the field is Devy best running back 55 overall. So I like the AK Deer call there as well, but I will say a nice Williams would definitely be my call. He's like I said, I think he's definitely proven more than AK at this point. So really quick before we get out of here, because we're already well over the hour mark at this point, we had the most likely to rebound from injury. I just wanted to put mine as Mario Craver. I mean, the dude just started off on fire this year, and I don't think you go from like 140 yards a game to like 12 yards a game unless there's some kind of reason, there's some kind of injury. On top of that, I think we've all admitted fault of not giving Casey Concepcion his flowers nearly enough, and now we are doing that. But he's moving on to the NFL, or we're assuming he's moving on to the NFL. Obviously, once again, no guarantees in this draft class or in this day and age. So we're assuming he's moving on. Guess who that's going to leave as the number one undisputed champ? Mario Craver. I think he will. I honestly, I don't even think it has to do with Casey Consent. I think it's more injury related. We saw the production just stop, and that doesn't just happen with the guy that's putting up that kind of yardage, that kind of play. And so, yeah, give me Mario Craver as my most likely to rebound from injury.
Quick rebound guy from injury. I think it's Caden Durham. We don't even know exactly what he's been dealing with this season. It could be something similar to another talented guy, Nick Singleton at Penn State. Just nobody really knows exactly what's gone on, but we just assume it's injury related. We know that Caden Durham, he's been banged up at times. We just don't know exactly what's been hampering him from even early season. And he was even a little bit banged up with a foot specific injury as a freshman. And that's what made his freshman breakout season at LSU even more impressive for Caden Durham, is that he was playing through some sort of a foot ankle type of injury. But at this point, it's not a promising trend. Do I have more hope for a guy like Mario Craver in comparison? Absolutely, right? Mario Craver's put together more consistency to this point, but I think there's a chance we see Caden Durham bounce back. Is it at LSU? I don't know. There's about to be a lot of changes within that team, but somewhere, somehow, he's a very, very explosive back if he can get right physically, health-wise.
I've got Dallas Wilson from Florida. Had a huge game against Texas, showed us what he could do. If he comes back, starts the season healthy, which he wasn't able to do this year, I think he could be really, really good. And that's not taking anything away from Vernell Brown either, who I also like. I think both of those guys are going to be very talented. And then my hopium one here is Bryant Wesco comes back from injury 100%. I don't know how likely it is, but that's my hope.
Absolutely. I think we were all hoping for that one. We not that we ever want someone to get hurt, but like when someone is doing that well and then to go get a neck injury, that's just always scary. And they said that he should be fine. Thank God. Please let him be fine. That's a good one because honestly, I was trying to think of like who's gotten hurt, and I couldn't really think of too many. But yeah, I love the Wesco one. We are well over the hour mark, so we're gonna go ahead and get out of here. This is a lot of fun. Doing the most likely to, and I think we gave you guys some good names here. Let us know which ones you think are crazy, which ones you think you agree with, and if you have any of your own. Obviously, make sure you're liking, subscribing, giving us the reviews that you think we deserve. It doesn't have to be a 5-star review, but if it can be, go ahead and do that. Make sure you're liking, subscribing over at Gridiron Ratings on the YouTube side. Make sure you're commenting, liking, so that we can go ahead and benefit from that. We appreciate you guys listening. We will be back in your ears as soon as possible from your C2C champs, except for Andy. We will see you guys. No, Andy's grandfathered in. We will see you guys next time. See you guys.